It is said that the news media or press is the unofficial fourth arm of government. Hence, we have a fourth estate of our own. So journalists' role is crucial to healthy functioning of democracies with its responsibility to inform the public. In Nigeria, and indeed across the world, the press has been hailed as the oxygen of democracy and agents of change and development and commended for holding the mirror to society and supposedly speaking truth to powers and insisting on governments being accountable to the people. However, all is not to hurry yet. The Nigerian Guild of Editors (NGE) maintains that the inalienable right of access and disseminate information through independent press is under attack, calling for protection of the media. Journalists have also blamed poor welfare and working conditions as some of the challenges confronting it, as well as censorship, harassment, and intimidation. As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to commemorate World Press Freedom Day with the theme Journalism under Digital Siege, how free is the press in Nigeria? Is journalism under siege, especially with the advent of social media? What can be done to protect and improve the welfare of journalists towards discharging their duties effectively? These questions will drive conversation tonight on the program Nigeria Today on NTA News 24. Thanks a lot for joining us. I am Musbad and Wahab. Meet my guest in just a moment. Thanks a lot for staying tuned in. We're looking at journalism and digital space on this day. And joining me in the studio, I have to introduce the number one pressman in the country first, and that's as the President, Nigeria Union of Journalists, Chris Isiguzo, is in the studio with me. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here.
All right. Also joining us is the Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity, and also former president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Garba Shehu. Good to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, former president of Nigeria Guild of Editors, I said, so he's still under the president of NUJ at the moment. So he's still a journalist, and once a journalist is always a journalist. Now, let me start off with the president of NUJ. It's another World Press Freedom Day commemoration. And this year's the theme is journalism under digital siege. What does this translate to for you, Mr. President?
Well, thank you very much for having me once more today. I was there earlier in the day where we also discussed this issue. As you've said it, we are commemorating the World Press Freedom Day. It's a unique day for journalism and journalists because it's a day that has been set aside the world over to celebrate press freedom, basically. What do we do in a day like this? Of course, we look at the fundamental principles of press freedom. We also evaluate the state of press freedom globally. And it's also a time when we stand up against attacks, against media independence. It's also a time when we pay tributes to journalists that have lost their lives in the course of practice. And most importantly, because of our conversation tonight, is also an opportunity to remind government of its obligations towards ensuring press freedom.
Right.
In the instant case, is a time that we've devoted to remind our government in Nigeria of its obligation to press freedom. Now your question has to do with the theme of this year's celebration. Journalism under digital siege. Well, you would agree with me that the way we practice journalism today is not the way it was done some years ago. Now before us, we have facilities. We have digital facilities. Now, sitting in one scruffy corner of your room, you can do a whole lot.
Very well.
You know, and that's why when it is said that journalism is under siege, because there are issues that tend to mitigate against press freedom, and they are traceable to the digitization process or system that we now have. Well,
What are those issues?
yes, one might say that when you talk about digital facilities, that because of the peculiar situation we found ourselves world over, not just in Nigeria, the state of insecurity and what have you, that government has got that responsibility to protect its citizens, you know, by ensuring that it operates every available facility that would make it possible for government to look at the activities of non-state actors. In the instant case, we are talking about the terrorists, we are talking about the insurgents, we are talking about those operating in the Northwest, what's their name again, bandits, we are talking about secessionist groups and the rest of it. So government has got to up its ante in digital facilities so that even communication between these non-state actors, the government will be able to intercept them. But why is it now affecting us? It does appear that these facilities that have been put together to unmask these non-state actors has equally been deployed to looking at the activities of journalism practice. You know, you talk about surveillance, you know, you talk about spying, you know, it is quite, and hacking, as the case may be. Every day today, you hear that your WhatsApp has been hacked, you hear that your Facebook has been hacked, your email has been hacked, and what have you. These are facilities that are available. And when some of these things are hacked, the privacy of the journalist is no longer guaranteed. You know, for instance, you are following up a story that has got to do with corruption. You know, you are going to look at the things that will aid you in doing this job. Already, digital facilities have been made available for those that are not supposed to know what you are doing to know it. You know, we have principle of source protection, where you are not allowed to expose your sources. Now, you don't even need to protect because the facilities are available to government. When you talk about whistleblowers, they are supposed to do that under wraps. They are supposed to be masked. Now, when you are having communication via your telephone, are they masked again? It is so open. So that is why there is that psychological impact on the journalist. He is no longer so bold and courageous as he ought to be. He is so scared because there are, even when they hack into these facilities, there are private messages the journalist has kept to himself, which state actors can easily lay hand on.
Knowing fully well that it's under surveillance.
It can culminate to arbitrary judicial litigations, you know. So these are some of the issues.
All right, well, we're going to talk more about the issues, but let me quickly talk to Malam Shehu. Now, we're talking of how digitization has further complicated the attacks on our journalists. How do you think this is also have an impact on the public? The public is supposed to have trust in journalists and journalism profession, as it were, but with this digitization, surveillance, hacking, like the president mentioned earlier, how do you think the public will feel this?
Well, I think he has said much of what you want me to say, except to add that, you know, in today's world,
right,
I think it has become nearly impossible to define who is a journalist. Because anyone holding a handheld telephone with a camera, you know, they can take picture, they can record a broadcast, and they can reach millions of people using WhatsApp. So people don't need training, NUJ and all of that. We have gone all through these things. You go to school, you are certificated because you have learned about ethics of journalism profession and what to do and what not to do. Now, the people who are out there talking to millions and billions of people don't go through this training. And the tragedy is that a lot more people now get their own primary information from this, digital media, using their telephone. Yeah, it has happened. I mean, a survey was done some time back when they bombed, there was a bombing incident at the British Parliament. More than 60% of British public didn't get this news on Sky News or BBC. No. It's the handheld telephone and the desktop computer in their own offices. So is journalism in trouble? Journalism is in deep trouble. And because the space is being swamped by largely fake and false news, which is drowning what is ethical, what is correct news and information. So it used to be said that in a struggle between truth and falsehood, journalism believed this, that the truth will always triumph over falsehood.
Very well.
These days, with digital technology, it is very difficult to envisage a situation in which the truth will triumph over falsehood, especially when this is aided by the fact that all of these technology companies, whether they're Google or WhatsApp or Facebook, they're not transparent. They are collecting data and information on you and I, on every inquiry you make, on every telephone call you make using Google. Who are you talking to? At what time? What are you buying? And they're selling information. A family in the US, there was a story. The teenage girl got pregnant. She was in trouble telling mom and dad that she was pregnant. She went to Google and was searching and asking, how do I get out of this trouble? The next thing was flyers, pamphlets on babies, on children, on childbirth were being sent into the compound by companies that manufacture and are looking for markets. And that is how mom and dad realized that teenage girl had become pregnant.
A terrible situation.
So that's where we are.
All right, that's it. But like we're saying, freedom for the press, our press freedom, has been what we have been looking for ages now. How do you think this is complicating this issue, Mr. President?
No, I didn't get your question.
How do you think this digitization is compounding the press freedom that the press have been soliciting?
Well, ordinarily, what would have...
Because ordinarily, with digitization that Malam Shehu just mentioned, the government will ordinarily not be comfortable with the press again. So do you think,
like I said,
actualization of press freedom is possible?
Ordinarily, one would have been more excited that you have facilities that would
aid your work.
Unlike those days when if you do a story, you would have to go and look for fax machine and begin to transmit and all that. Now, with the advent of some of these digital tools, it is a lot more easier to do your job. But it has also become a lot more difficult, because like the scenario he has just painted, two actually, where you sit down, what you cannot even tell your sister, what you cannot even tell your parents, it's just like when you open Facebook, you sit down, you give every information about you to an unknown person. You don't know that person. You open Twitter, you give every information about you. Sometimes people even store private information using, what is it called again? The iPhone cloud. You store it in the cloud. Who operates the cloud? You don't know. Everything about you, So what you're doing is to hand over your life
to someone else,
to an unknown person. And this person can make or mar you. This person can wreck you any day, anytime. You know, it's very, very simple. So that is the challenge we have found ourselves. It's not just about when you talk about digitization, you're talking about social media and what have you. It goes deeper than that.
All right, Mr. President, we're going to go deeper like you have just mentioned, but let's quickly take a breather here and we hear from some Nigerians and what they think about the freedom of press in Nigeria.
Things are a little bit better now, unlike before, especially during the military regime. The press, there is nothing called press freedom that even though it's captured in the Nigerian constitution. But nowadays, thanks to democracy, people are free to express their view, although you still have a limit because at times you might think that you have freedom of speech and you'll be tampering on another person's freedom. But by and large, this time around now, there is a little bit of press freedom now. At least people can express their view on any issues, even issues that concerns government.
Press freedom in Nigeria, I think we're not there yet, but we hope we'll get there soon. You know, it's been fair. It can get better. At least now we can see that it's not as back then when what you say can be used against you. But now with democracy and with the new government, we have seen that, you know, press is actually present. We cannot say for a fact that it's 100%, but at least 80%, and it's a pass mark. And we hope with as time goes on, it will improve and we'll get to the particular point where both press freedom and everything relating to freedom of speech will be implemented.
I would say that it's not entirely free because we are not able to report how we are meant to report news. We're not, you know, going all out, being open, being, you know, unbiased. So I feel like we are reporting in fear. As a matter of fact, as press, we don't have insurance. We don't have life insurance. We don't operate in, you know, we don't operate in a platform that we're protected. So if anything happens, you're more or less, you know, just gone and forgotten.
Right, a cross-section of pressmen there on the streets of Abuja talking about their views about press freedom in Nigeria. Now, they believe, some of them believe it's getting better. Why? The lady there seems not to see anything getting better in press freedom in Nigeria. Malam Shehu, how do you react to this?
I think that, well, you said they are journalists, so I allow them to hold their own opinions there, to which they are entitled. If you ask me, I will tell you that in terms of the philosophy of the freedom of the press and of expression, it exists in absolute terms in Nigeria as we speak today. It's not impaired as far as the control by authority is concerned. We have had instances, as they have said in the past, even under democratic civilian administration in the country, press had been attacked, newspapers had been seized and closed and all of that. It's no longer happening. So where you have problem, I will blame it largely on two things. One, self-censorship, which journalists themselves invite onto themselves, maybe out of fear or other considerations, greed, ideology, you know, religion, ethnicity, all of these things come into play. And journalists battle with them, and there are some that succumb. And two, control by ownership, because ownership, wherever it is decisive in content. And in some media houses, the owner decides what is in, what is out. But the beauty of it is that nobody can today say that the government of Nigeria is locking down newspapers or is grabbing journalists and putting them into jail. We don't have as a government under President
Okay,
Muhammad.
let's see whether the
one
president
court case
is going to agree with you. I can see you're smiling already. You're trying to juxtapose what those pressmen said with what the SSA is talking about.
Well, thank you very much. I would largely agree with him.
All right.
You know, from what he has said. But
To what extent?
the fact still remains that we have peculiar operational difficulties that we face as practitioners in Nigeria. You talk about the economic challenge. The journalist in Nigeria is poorly remunerated. That's it. And there is no way this journalist goes to the same markets with the person that works in an NPC. He goes to the same market with a CBN staff. He goes to the same market with somebody working in the villa. They all go to the same market. And he is poorly remunerated. In some cases, they are not even paid at all. You know, and that's why we have been canvassing for a new media salary structure. You know, we are taught that at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, that when the government decided to attend to some of the frontliners, you recall that government did a lot for the medical personnel. And I'm aware that something was done for the security personnel. And when you talk about the frontliners at the peak of that health challenge that we had, it was like a tripartite thing. You have the media, you have the medical personnel, and you have the security. They were the key frontliners. But whereas the other two, the two legs of the tripod, were somehow attended to, the media was left in the cold. And that's a challenge. So
how is this affecting the press freedom?
Well, there is no way a hungry man is said to be an angry man. And they are not going to... The Constitution has imposed a responsibility on us. And that's the responsibility of holding government accountable. And when you talk about accountability, you are talking about transparency in governance. When you talk about transparency, you are talking about good governance. And if Constitution has said, okay, this chunk of people would have to take care of this issue, and these people are left in the cold, they are not paid properly. You painted the picture of the ownership challenge that we have. Whoever pays the piper dictates the tone. You have the economic challenge we've talked about. We have the issue of arbitrary arrests, clamp down, harassment, intimidation. We have a good number of journalists that have, as a NUJ president, I attend to some of these issues every other day. You understand? So these things instill that psychological fear.
So we still have a long way to go.
Obviously we do.
Okay, let's see how the SSA will respond to this. In the latest World Press Freedom Index, Nigeria is ranked 129 out of 179 in the world. And that's 9 places was the ranking in 2021. It was 120 last year in 2021. So how do you reconcile this with the press freedom that you talked about?
Well, let me first of all say that I would like to give information on what the president said.
Right.
There was COVID relief for the media, huge sums of money lent out to media houses on single-digit interest rate. Of course, requirements are there for media houses to fill, and I assure you that the earliest newspapers that got this money were those that had been the most critical of the Buhari presidency. So this is to tell you that there was even no discrimination in terms of politics in the issuance of those COVID relief facilities to the media. Did it trickle down to the workforce? We don't manage newspapers for government cannot manage these situations for media houses.
You're talking about the newspaper, but I'm also a journalist, by the way, and I work all through the period you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. That government of Nigeria through CBN and the banks that issued will not micromanage media houses.
All right.
So they decide what they did with that money, but to ensure that the media didn't die, the government also included them in COVID relief and they were paid.
Was that fund meant for the media houses or the pressmen?
The media houses cannot be media houses if there are no pressmen inside them. What the media owner decides to do with all of the assets, human, technical, is entirely their own business. Government cannot micromanage.
No, it's going to be two different things. If you have a fund to maintain a building, that's quite different from when that same money is meant for the occupants of the building.
Yeah, but if the government of Nigeria is calling media houses to come and discuss loan, they're not going to call newscaster like yourself come on, is your managing director, they will call. So he represents you, and if he speaks for himself and for machines, not human beings, it's entirely his business. That's the point I'm making. And to quickly go to your own, I'm not sure I understand the indices that they were used in the evaluation of saying that Nigeria had stepped backwards. I want to assure you that there is no government policy that says there shouldn't be freedom of the press and of expression in this country. This government is absolutely clear in its conscience. We're abiding by the Constitution as prescribed under Section 22, the mass media, and 36 of the Constitution. Mass media are free to report, and it's entirely their own thing if they decide not to. Because, as I said earlier on, self-censorship is a big issue. Right. Sometimes it is caused by poor education of operators.
Okay, thank you very much, SSA. Now, Mr. Chris Isiguzo, you can now take that to the bank and discharge your responsibility as you're supposed. On that note, let me say a very big thank you to Senior Special Assistants, to the President of Media and Publicity, and also former President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Malam Garba Shehu, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
And of course, the president, my own president of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, Chris Isiguzo, we really appreciate your time. You've been here since morning.
My pleasure.
All right. See you again tomorrow. It's been Nigeria Today. Thank you for your time.